this weekend we're in Tenby / Saundersfoot, like going between the two, so they're not the same thing, they are different places. I just like winding up going about it. But yeah, so we're in Pembrokeshire and basically we've come out in a tuk-tuk to explore some of Tenby's history. We're right now going on a roundabout, which is terrifying.
Dimbych y Pysgod, or Tenby, is a seaside town in Pembrokeshire, but we actually started the day 2 miles from Tenby in Begelly, where we went to borrow a tuk-tuk.
That's the point. Does everyone have this much trouble with just me?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay,
Neutral.
Neutral.
They turn over quite easily.
Okay, thanks. Jesus Christ. Is he serious?
Greg is not unnatural to tuk-tuk driving, it seems. I think it's going okay. It's very loud. Okay, I think he's got the hang of it. So, history incoming. Incoming? Pending. History pending. I'm not talking to you.
Going well so far. Just enjoying the little main road now. You open her up, get to 4. Lovely. I think it goes about 55 kilometres an hour. I don't know what that is in miles per hour, about 35. So trundles along quite nicely, to be fair. Every single, well, not every single, but loads of the people that I'm driving past are laughing. And it must look quite ridiculous because I'm 6'4". My legs are too big for this tuk-tuk. And also it's just weird seeing a tuk-tuk in a bloody Welsh village as well, I suppose.
So we're now entering Tenby. There's the sign. Whoop, whoop.
So we're just coming into Tenby now, and we're down what's called the South Parade, and that's like kind of where you get really the best view of the town wall. It's like a really long stretch. So put the camera down a bit lower. Face that way. Yeah, there we go. And you can see there the walls are all on the left there, and I'm slowing down and probably annoying people behind me, but there we go. Yeah, and you have the walls there, and then one of the turrets. They were added later than the initial walls, and these walls were added upon over time. And I'll talk about that a bit more now. I'm just going to find somewhere to park. Shouldn't be too difficult with this. Yeah, we're just walking along the town walls now. Park the tuk-tuk there. You got the town walls on the left there, and then the 5 arches, which you can see ahead of you. And then there's a little blue plaque as well. Oh yeah. You can just see there, look, a little plaque saying 5 arches. Southwest gate into the town. So yeah, and this is the 5 arches, which, like I said before, the turrets and the arches and the entrances were added a little bit later. Yeah, the history of Tenby actually does go before the town walls were built, but this felt like a good place to start because it was like it's what first kind of created the blueprint for what Tenby has become now.
The earliest known mention of Tenby is believed to be in the Welsh poem Et Mic Dimbych, which dates back to the 9th century, meaning in praise of Tenby. Et Mic Dimbych is in the Book of Taliesin, a 14th century manuscript named for the famous poet. The poem describes a fine fortress standing by the sea, At the time of the poem, the kings of Dyfed had ruled this part of Wales for over 400 years, but that was all about to change.
After the Norman invasion in 1066, they basically, William the Conqueror thought that it was his kind of divine right to rule England, so they kind of poured all of their effort, the Normans, into conquering England, and then left Wales a little bit later, and it took them a lot longer to conquer Wales. I think a mixture of the difficult terrain and a lack of the initial tenacity they had to take England, probably, that was a combination of both that led them to take a bit longer. But Tenby and Pembrokeshire was one of the first places they did manage to take. So on where Castle Hill is, that's probably where the old Dyfed, the old kings of Dyfed had their fortress. So it makes sense, you kind of got a hill fort right by the sea, you got a good view of like any invaders. It was probably, the Welsh didn't build really stone fortresses, but they would have been like a wooden hill fort, and that was where the Normans then built their first like castle in Tenby, and it's still there to this day.
After Tenby in South Pembrokeshire had been taken by the Normans, they set about consolidating control of the area. This involved kicking out the native Welsh and settling Flemish refugees in their place. In the century that followed, this Norman colony was strengthened. Both defenders and invaders built a series of castles, creating a cultural and linguistic boundary, English speaking below the line, Welsh speaking above it. This became known as the Lansky Line. Although the Normans successfully colonised South Pembrokeshire, the area was penned in and surrounded by the native Welsh, which was what led to the nickname Little England beyond Wales. It also resulted in Tenby town walls being erected to keep the Welsh out.
Basically, the pesky Welshmen and women kept invading Tenby again. Obviously, it was such a because of the natural like cove that it's in. It was like obviously an important position for trade. So it was in a good strategic position for trade. So the Welsh obviously wanted it back, and they actually, Welsh forces sacked the by then English town 3 times. And the third one was Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, or Llywelyn the Last, during his uprising against the English crown. And after that they decided they had enough of that and decided to build the first walls. So they wouldn't have looked like they look today, because obviously they're much bigger and they've been added to over time. Yeah, that's when they built the first walls, to try and keep the Welsh out, basically.
The man who gave the order to build the first walls was William de Valence, the first Earl of Pembroke. The original walls weren't added to for another 200 years, but they proved their worth in the meantime by successfully keeping out yet another Welsh revolutionary army, this time led by Owain Glyndŵr. Although the walls had done their job, it soon became apparent that they needed further upgrading, and so in 1457 the refurb was underway. The job was paid for by the town's merchants and a man named Jasper Tudor, who, like the town, was set to play a major part in the future of Wales.
Prior to taking the crown, Jasper Tudor's nephew Henry escaped from Tenby and went into exile in Brittany. We're going to get back in the tuk-tuk and take you to where he supposedly snuck out of Tenby into a boat in the dead of night and then snuck over to Brittany. I don't think I'm ready for a hill start, but here we go. We're going to go through Tenby town centre now, and anyone who's been there in the summer is going to know it's an absolute nightmare to drive through. So never mind the bloody tuk-tuk when I'm only just driving for the first time, so here we go. Do you want to cross? Here we go. Woo. Toby. So the reason that Henry needed to do a runner from Wales and from the British Isles was because he was seen as a threat to the Yorkists, because he had a claim to the throne. So when there was a Lancastrian on the throne, Jasper Tudor took Henry to court with him, But then when a Yorkist then took the throne, it meant that they had to just escape, basically. Yeah, and this is where it was believed to have happened. So underneath here is where the tunnels are supposed to be, and they lead out into the harbour, and you can kind of imagine now, yeah, and the tunnels are still there, and you can see when you're down there as well, you can see the entrance that leads out into the harbour as well. So yeah, I suppose you would have been, like I said earlier, kind of smuggled. Oh, the seagulls, can you hear them? It's so annoying. But yeah, they would have kind of been smuggled in the dead of night through the tunnels into a boat and then off to Brittany. So yeah, but the interesting thing about Henry VII was, fucking shut up, you. So when Henry came back from exile, like 14 years later, he came with the intention of claiming the throne. So he landed in Pembrokeshire, marched through Wales, and he knew that he needed to really play up to his kind of Welsh ancestry and his Welshness to get Welsh people on his side. One, so he could go through Wales, and two, because it was important to get their numbers on his side. The poets in Wales at the time and his supporters, they basically hailed him as Ymab Darogan, which basically means the son of destiny, and that refers to like an ancient Welsh prophecy of like a kind of messiah of one of the old Welsh kings before the English conquered Wales. And King Cadwaladr was one of those kings, and he is who Henry claimed to be descended from. So he put the dragon of Cadwaladr on his banner, which is why we have a Welsh dragon on the flag today, and he marched through Wales then with that to pick up support and claiming that he was the son of destiny and that he would free Wales. Unfortunately for the Welsh, it didn't quite turn out that way, because although his intentions were good, his first son was called Arthur, after King Arthur, who was probably the most famous of the sons of destiny. And when Prince Arthur became of age, he was made the Prince of Wales, and he set about repealing the laws, like the penal laws in Wales that were imposed after Owain Glyndwr's rebellion, which basically was just extremely oppressive set of rules, basically prevent the Welsh from rebelling again. So yeah, Prince Arthur spent a year repealing a lot of the most oppressive of those rules and laws, but unfortunately he died yeah, after only a year in the role. So after that, you might have heard of King Henry VIII, but he was the younger son. And then obviously, yeah, famous for his wives, but also famous for his the Laws in Wales Act, which basically fully annexed Wales into England. So in the end, Henry VII, you could probably argue, wasn't much of a son of destiny at all. He didn't really do much to free Wales from the oppression of the English king, or the English throne. So, but it's quite funny that in a roundabout way, Jasper Tudor helped to fortify the walls that were first built to defend Tenby from rebellious Welshmen, and then it was his nephew who took the English throne on the back of his Welshness. So there we go. And that's it there. Yeah, we're just going up one of Tenby's old little alleyways, look. And you can see here the Tudor merchant's house. So probably one of, if not the oldest building in Tenby. Yeah, dating back hundreds of years, which is pretty cool. And then there's a restaurant called Plantagenet, which is a reference to the ruling family, Plantagenet dynasty. Plantagenet house there, like, unfortunately closed at the moment because of coronavirus. And I was hoping they'd have a little bit of history, because to be honest, I forgot about this. Here we go. But they've got some history, which I thought would be about the Tudor merchant's house, but it's actually just about cake. Eastern European cake. There we go, not much use for this video, although I'm sure it's very interesting. So here we go, look, I'll show you walking down the little alleyway, and it's really cool actually. It looks proper, like, you've got the little like Victorian lantern there, and then you've got the big chimney of the Tudor merchant's house at the top. That's very cool. And do you know what, like, I always say this, but grew up in the area, like obviously from Saundersfoot, but spent loads of time in Tenby, and never actually fully appreciated how cool it is, just going down the little streets and stuff. Nice little bookshop. Covion. Is that what it says? Covion. Alright, how's it going? And then you got all these little cottages as well, all probably dating back to not quite as
No, that's okay.
thanks. Yeah, and look at this door, proper old door look. So this house dates back to the 15th century, and that was around the time when Tenby would have been a really busy like port, and there would have been lots of trade. I know that Tenby was where I think the first oranges in the UK landed in Tenby from like Portugal or somewhere. So that's a pretty cool claim to fame. Yeah, so this is the Tudor merchant's house. I don't think they know who lived here exactly. It would have just been a Tudor merchant. So yeah, 500 years old. Dates back to, well, 600 years old actually. My maths is off. 15th century, 1400s. So it would be around 500 to 600 years old. And yeah, it would have probably been the home of like a wealthy merchant of Tenby at the time, and he probably would have traded all sorts of different things like wool and other Welsh exports. And it was in an ideal position really because of where it was on like the south coast. It was like on an ideal trade route then going down towards like Portugal and Spain, so you'd probably imagine that people in Tenby have been trading things out of the harbour for hundreds of years. Well, or we know for hundreds of years, but perhaps even longer, back to when before the Normans. And then there's another interesting bit here. Look, Charles Norris, author of Etchings of Tenby, lived here. So yeah, this is a proper like old part of Tenby. Hello, man enjoying his pint.
Yeah,
I'm very good. How are you?
yeah. Not too bad.
Good.
It's crazy this world, ain't it?
Oh, it's absolutely crazy.
Well, like
yeah.
this 6 months back.
I know. The new normal, innit? There's plenty of people enjoying a few beers in Tenby in the sunshine. But yeah, this is Tenby House, and this was the mansion that was built by William Paxton on the site of the Globe Inn. So there was a pub here before, and John Wesley preached from the old market cross nearby. So the building itself actually dates back to before William Paxton, but he kind of obviously probably added a few stories and made it nice and big and grand because that would have been his home. So there we go, now people just enjoy beers here.